Good afternoon. We'll start the Park and Recreation meeting in 2 minutes. Park and Recreation in 2 minutes. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll open up the Park and Recreation Committee meeting. We have some brief minutes from the last meeting, which was held on February 25th. If I could get a motion to approve, please. Yes. The motion is second. If there aren't any questions, all in favor? Aye. Okay. None opposed. Motion carries. Okay, we have before us, we'll go right into this. We have before us Mr. Hardy, and he has a presentation that he wants to present. So, Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. President Somerville asked that we come and provide an overview of how the 2018, the inaugural year of Parks Challenge went, provide a peek into the timeline for the 2019 application, and then enlist your help to get the word out as we prepare for the 2019 Akron Parks Challenge. So I'll just provide a very high-level summary from our perspective, and then ask Bridget Ambrisco from Friends of the Metro Parks / Akron Parks Collaborative, which is a real honest-to-goodness thing, helping us build our friends groups around town, to talk about the three particular parks. And then we have Angela Miller here from Friends of Chestnut Ridge to give an overview of what it felt like from the neighborhood perspective. But overall, to say that I am in love with this program would be an understatement. I think that it surpassed a lot of our expectations in year one. We're excited about year two. In year one, we were able to do 3 parks because of the additional support from the Knight Foundation. We would hope that they would come in again, but we were very happy to receive their support in year one to go from 2 parks to 3 parks. As I said, the partnership with Bridget and the Parks Collaborative has been a godsend, because it has expanded our internal capacity to get after our parks in a meaningful way, and more importantly, have the time and the talent to engage residents in a meaningful way, so that they can design their parks and we get to make it happen, which is the fun part. So I have to give an incredible amount of respect and thanks to Bridget for putting in a lot of time, personal and otherwise, to make this program successful. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bridget to talk about the 3 parks, and then Angela to talk about what it actually felt like.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to present to you today. It has been a whirlwind of a year, and tons of fun working with all of the communities. As you see in this nice little summary that we have on the 3 parks, the decisions have been made, the communities know what they want, and now we're just sort of figuring out all the details. Reservoir Park, for one, was supposed to start construction today on a new walking trail. I'm not sure if it did with that snowfall, but it will be any minute now. They're also looking at plaza area improvements, so sort of a seating hangout area for the community to gather. And then playgrounds, which we're still sort of working out the details. The really great part about this project is the right committee who the group that we worked with directly on this project went out and applied for additional funds from Northern Ohio Golf Charities and was actually awarded $30,000 towards a playground. So that will be starting right away too, where the group really wants to have what's called nature play, sort of more of the natural playgrounds with kids to jump on and that kind of thing. So Cadillac Park will be going out to bid soon too. They really want a contemplative space that their neighborhood can gather, sort of their front yard, to hang out with each other. And then Chestnut Ridge Park, which Angela will talk about a little bit more, but the real feature there is the amphitheater. So electricity was a big cost in making that programmable. And through Angela's leadership, they formed the Friends of Chestnut Ridge Park, which will be helping to program that space. So with that sort of quick description, I'm going to pass it to Angela to talk about her experience with the Friends of Chestnut Ridge group.
So in our neighborhood, thank you. Yep. In our neighborhood, we had already been focusing on Chestnut Ridge Park. I don't know if you're aware, there's a lot of movement in Kenmore now for economic revitalization. There's a burgeoning art scene. So we had our eye on Chestnut Ridge for a long time. In fact, I have since my children were small. That amphitheater used to call to me kind of hauntingly because it sat there abandoned. And I would always imagine the WPA workers laying those stones and thinking about what would happen there. So we were already discussing that, and being a community activist of several years, people were approaching me, asking me how they could perform at Chestnut Ridge, because the music scene that's happening on the boulevard wanted to spill over into an outdoor space. And just as we were trying to wrap our heads around that, the Parks Challenge appeared. And it felt like some gift fell out of the sky. So we already had a nascent group that had formed around this, mostly performers. So we jumped at the chance. And it is the most exciting thing that I've been involved in since I've been working in my community. Bridget is such an able partner. And the concept, this is something you all want in your neighborhoods. It has the capacity to activate future park stewards. In fact, future stewards of the neighborhood, people who have heretofore not been involved at all. Because you have parents, you have grandparents, you have people who love green spaces, you have dog walkers. I mean, who doesn't love a park? So I couldn't encourage you more to be the face of this and put it forward to your communities and encourage them to apply, because they won't regret it.
Thank you, Angela. Two things to add, and then we open it up for questions and concerns and comments. But one thing I wanted to double down on, our hope in the beginning of this challenge, by literally challenging residents to pitch their park and work alongside with us to design it, was that they would take the initiative and bring in additional dollars. Not only did that happen at Reservoir Park, it's happened at all three parks. So with Cadillac Triangle Park, or Cadillac Park, I have to drop the triangle now, which is a community decision. The Knight Foundation came in with a grant to help the Cleveland Urban Design Collaborative out of Kent State's College of Architecture to work alongside the neighborhood to help design. That one was a heavy lift with design because it's literally a patch of grass. So that was an incredible thing to watch. And then at Chestnut Ridge, we knew that an updated accessible playground was something that the community had selected, but we didn't know how big we'd be able to go with our budget. And Jim Ashley in the planning department and Melinda and everyone basically pitched the manufacturer, and they chipped in half the cost so that they could actually get the playground they wanted. So it's been tremendous to watch how this has grown organically in just the first year. And with that, we'll open it up for questions. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about what we're doing this year.
Oh, that's right. So Angela also reminded me that we just got a notice from the Akron Community Foundation on Friday that Friends of Chestnut Ridge was awarded a $2,000 on-the-table grant.
Oh, great.
To bring in a program that they had done last year and wanted to do again, which is called Many Voices, One Akron, and its focus is on diversity and inclusion through the arts. It was a fabulous program last year. Unfortunately, the weather made it go inside, but this year it will be bigger and better, and we'll use the amphitheater for that. So they'll be managing that program and getting lots of the community involved with that as well. So additionally, yes? Yeah.
Yes.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. The reservoir part, you know, just it sounds kind of strange to be reservoir and not talk about water. Are we doing anything in that vein? And the other piece was, each one of the reservoir and Chestnut seems to have an anchoring community organization that helps them. So who is that group at Cadillac?
So I will defer to Councilman Neal on the last question, but clearly the water heritage at Reservoir Park was very important to the neighborhood. And one of the two things, big project, little project, although the little project wasn't little. One of the things that the neighborhood asked was, how can we commemorate the water tower into the nature play at Reservoir Park? And Bridget and I, through the Civic Commons, stumbled upon a group out of Denmark called Monstrum Studios that does nothing but custom play equipment for just that purpose, sort of neighborhood flair. They're not cheap, and so we were concerned that we would make that budget, but we think that we're going to make that happen. So as part of the new playground at Reservoir Park, there will be a replica of the water tower that will be there. The water tower itself, though, is a great opportunity. I know Councilman Fusco and others have been working with the water department on a future use for that that can be incorporated into the park. So I think stay tuned on that one. But the water aspect for Reservoir was absolutely a big piece of that. And then Councilman on Rick.
Sure. First, I just want to say thank you to Bridget. I've had a chance to sit in and observe the process. And the process is what I really appreciate. True collaboration, engaging the community, and one of the things you spoke of, and this points to Councilwoman Sims' question that came out, was everything when they talked about what they wanted to put in the park, one of the questions that came out was maintaining it,
Yep.
the sustainability. And this is just something, if we're going to continue to grow our city, and we talk about it, but again, I appreciate the process, because if, as Ms. Angela said, ambassadors, those who take ownership of the process, if you engage people through the process, they take ownership, and then it takes on a life of its own. To speak directly to Ms. Sims' question, one of the things I was blessed to find out through this, because I had been searching for an established CDC in my ward, was the fact that Cadillac Boulevard Neighborhood Development Corporation CDC was established. And they are very technically savvy, you know, looking at things outside of just the traditional funding through our local community. So it was just a blessing, but that's what was key. So again, thank you for allowing me to sit in on the process. My hat's off to all the communities, because I'm assuming they're just as dynamic as the one that's in my ward. And from a council standpoint, I think, in working with the administration, if we can find ways to bolster the technical support, even to the fact some of these groups are savvy enough to write their own grants, but I think if we find ways to even support them through other grant writers just on a neighborhood level, that would be excellent. So,
Thank you, Councilman. I'd invite Bridget to talk about a little bit that the spirit behind Akron Parks Collaborative is to do just that. So instead of, you know, dozens and dozens of small neighborhood corporations or neighborhood groups that may or may not even have a 501c3 applying, they can leverage the Parks Collaborative and Bridget's expertise.
Right, so we're working through forming the nonprofit organization that will sort of serve as an umbrella entity. So one of the goals, working with each of the community groups, is to establish Friends of whatever park, which we were very successful with at Chestnut Ridge and Reservoir Park, and Cadillac Park had, like you said, their already existing entity. But we are also planning on trying to support those that apply that might not get the challenge yet. So, we'll continue to provide that. We will serve as their fiscal agent. I have assisted the different groups with grant writing as they've submitted those, and we'll also offer them web presence and ability to, take donations and things like that. So we're sort of we're putting all of those pieces together as we grow, so that we can support all of those community groups as they keep developing and throughout the city.
Excellent, thank you.
So I will continue on then with, we are doing the challenge again, which I am thrilled about and excited to take on 2 new parks. The plan is to announce the challenge again at the beginning of April, as we did last year, with April 30th being the deadline, and then sort of moving from there, a June 1st announcement as well, to allow us to work rigorously with these groups over the summer months to do some prototyping and that sort of thing. So I'm here to ask you, I would love to come to your ward meetings again. I came to some last year, and looking at the end of March into April, I'm happy to attend, talk about the challenge, and also I would encourage you to let people know that, that I'm coming, and I'm most likely going to bring mentors like Angela and from some of the other groups as well, where, if people have an idea but they're not sure what to do with it, we can talk with them during the meeting or after the meeting. We can bring different people together, because one of the things that we found with Reservoir Park specifically was that, we had 15 applications from them, and we were able to put people together who didn't know each other, some of them, and then they worked collaboratively and became the core group. So I think if we do that on the front end and have them collaborate on applications, I think that would be helpful for the review committee too, to sort of do that on the front end. So I will send out an email to you and reach out to you as well, but welcome you to reach out to me, and I'd love to come to your ward meetings. And thanks to all of you who invited me last year. I know some of them didn't happen because they were already passed and we were a little bit behind, but I'm looking forward to trying to make it to every single council meeting this year.
Thank you. Any questions from members? Any more questions from members of the committee or from council? Ms. Sims?
So do we plan to, the Friends of the Park, to kind of model that similar to like the Friends of the Library?
So I think from the city's vision, it was really trying to less about, obviously our park system as a city park system, so it's not levy funded, but to leverage that kind of expertise, yes, to create a patchwork or a network, if you will, of neighborhood-based friends of groups that could come together, share expertise, share knowledge, and support each other in helping to keep up and maintain our parks, all through the backbone organization that Bridget is building, that's a separate non-501c3 from the city, so they can apply for grants that we can't apply for and use them to support our parks. So in a perfect world, 10 years from now, we'll have dozens of friends of, enter that name of the park, all over the city that are part of a network that is curated by Bridget and the backbone organization, and they mentor each other like Angela's stepped up and willing to do, and we start to get not just co-designing our parks, but co-maintaining them, so that the city maintains, but also the friends groups help to keep an eye on the street, if you will, with our parks. But I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I do just want to add the enthusiasm that's being generated. I know you heard that from Angela here, but the group at Reservoir Park has already decided that we're organizing a trolley tour so that they can see all the other Park Challenge parks that are happening, and they are all willing to work with the other groups. So they're so excited to have been invited to give their ideas and to sort of have ownership of their own neighborhood park. So yes, I think, you know, the other thing that we've modeled it after is Philadelphia, which has a network of amazing friends groups. I think they have, you know, hundreds of them, but that has developed over years and years and years. So it's a great model, and I've talked to them quite a bit on, you know, best practices, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and that type of thing.
So long term, I guess, even long after we're gone, because I hope that we still realize the assets that parks are for bringing together community, is to make sure that there's some equitable way of maintaining them. For example, if there is a membership as a part of Friends of the Park, are we establishing some kind of fund at one of the foundations that we're able to draw down on to make sure that we do have an equitable way of maintaining the parks, and that it's not almost like some of the other things we do, like if you pay income tax or what the income tax levels are in a certain community, we expend resources in that way. I'm just trying to figure out if that's maybe a part of the thinking too, to establish some kind of fund of one of the foundations, just to ensure that there's some.
I can say from the city's perspective, we don't ever see a membership fee or anything like that to be a part of the collaborative. You don't even necessarily have to be a formal 501c3 to be a friends group. It's interesting, even the KAB Adopt-A-Sites that are located at parks, Jackie and Bridget have connected, and those folks can easily become a Friends of group and connect with other people across the city. They don't necessarily have to have, you know, that formality. That's what Bridget can provide if that's not something that they want to do.
Yeah, I just want to jump in real quick because I see, what I'd like to see is that we create the synergy between the My Neighborhood, Our Akron Neighborhood Assistance Department and the Parks Group, because there's definitely ways to work. Matter of fact, the thing that led to the Akron City Council, My Neighborhood, Our Akron City Council grant, a strong advocate for the parks, Mr. Jack Grover, was coming to the My Neighborhood, Our Akron meetings, and he said, hey, I'm cleaning up the park, I'm cleaning up the park. So that led to some focus on, you know, on the parks. And so the Neighborhood Assistance Department in this would be a nice synergy as we try to formalize the structure for government and community engagement. As you mentioned, in the reservoir, there are a lot of people that were engaged, but they just weren't organized. It's my hope that we don't leave it to just willy-nilly let it happen, that we formalize the process so that communities know how to engage, not just in their community, but you understand that the process is going to be the same if you go from Kenmore to the reservoir, to the Cadillac, to whatever park, or whatever community. We have a formal structure for community engagement, because that makes it easier to do the heavy lifting. So I'm hoping that we could see synergy be developed between the Neighborhood Assistance Department in this, because it was out of that, like I said, that folks, we found out folks who were already adopting certain segments of neighborhood, mainly parks, and I use Mr. Grover as an example. Mr. Fusco?
Yeah, thank you. It seems as though that there's typically like a lead person or agency in a community that's kind of driving the whole thing. For example, like the Wright Committee, for 20 years they've been doing things over there in the Goodyear Heights community, and I know over in the Kenmore community the momentum of late has been tremendous. But the thing that's the most striking whenever we're talking about community engagement and community driving, you know, what policy ought to be, should be, in terms of these great assets, this is exactly how it should be done, and it's leveraging even more. I would like to almost see, like, you know, where we're at on that piece. You know, like the investment is X, but then again, I mean, as a council large person, you know, seeing the whole thing, you know, like, okay, we've leveraged X amount, you know, and kind of gauge that as time goes on, so.
We can absolutely track that.
Thank you.
So I think, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think in the last presentation, I asked for that same information, that what were the resources we were leveraging as a result of the challenges. I too, in the question I asked relative to Cadillac, is who is that driver? Because I believe having a driver is important, like we have at the other locations. I'm not as familiar maybe with, as other folks are, with who the Cadillac folks are,
Sure.
the CDC people, that I don't know if that's new. I hadn't heard of them before.
Rick
Just to
Buchanan.
make sure that there is a local driver that is a part of that community. We see how important that is. And Kenmore was someone who's on fire about a location that goes way back to the youth of her own children. And so we want that same kind of synergy, as my colleague would use, or engagement or connection to the community.
For sure, and if I may, Mr. Chairman, Rick Buchanan really sold the selection committee on Triangle, or on Cadillac Park. I mean, it literally is a triangle patch of grass, and he lives across the street in his parents' house. He grew up looking at that patch of grass, wanting to do something with it, and really sold everybody. So I think Councilman Fusco brings up a good point, that you don't need to have an organization, but you do need to have a champion. And Rick definitely did a lot of the heavy lifting with Bridget to try and galvanize the community around doing something about this park. But
No, I just want to speak to your assurance. Trust me, and you know the work that's been going on in Ward 4. The whole thing is, the mantra is collaboration and cooperative work and economics. But knew that Rick was always engaged in the community, didn't know that they had actually formalized the process to where basically he's leveraging his professional experience and to give back to the community in such a way that's going to be a blessing. Because it's important, if this is key, if you come in and you do something for people or someone's not a part of that community, it sits there. But when the community is engaged, the community takes ownership, it sustains itself. So to your point, I can guarantee you that sustainability, community engagement won't be a problem with the Cadillac Triangle Park piece. And I just want to speak again to this whole park initiative. Last week we had, looking at the concerts in the park and that type of thing. And one of the things that we saw outside of what the city did, and Mr. Kamer asked a question that Mr. Valley's getting us to answer on, is that sure, the city did so many things, but when we looked at the overall portfolio of what was taking place in the community was the driving force of most of the activities, having community festivals, community events, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a great synergy that can take place where we can leverage everybody's collective work. So I'm excited. I know we have other things on the agenda outside of Park and Rec, so I want to make sure we leave them time. Is there anything else from anyone else on council or on committee? Nope. Appreciate you coming down.
thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
At that time, if there's nothing else to come before us, motion to adjourn? Okay, second? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, next committee is Rules. let's see, Keith, Amobian. Is Freeman back in motion? Okay.
I'd like to call the Rules Committee to order.
Thing for James Ingram. Did you come up for that?
No, I just asked. Okay, I'm going to call the Rules Committee to order. All members are present. May I have a motion on our minutes from our past meeting? Have a motion. Do I have a second? And I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, the minutes pass. Okay, the item that we have on our old agenda, I would like time on. And then we have a new piece to come before us today. This is a resolution. Whoopsie. Resolution acknowledging the accomplishments and career of James Ingram, expressing condolences and sympathy to the family of James Ingram on his passing and declaring an emergency. Okay, and do I have someone who would like to speak on that? Councilwoman Samples.
Thank you. I requested this resolution in acknowledgement and tribute to James Ingram, who was born and raised here in Akron, Ohio, in East Akron. His family, really dear friends of my family, and I think it's overdue that he received the acknowledgement that he so well deserved. A lot of people didn't even know James was from Akron. He's a graduate of East High School, nominated for 14 Grammys, received 2, nominated for 2 Oscars. He just has a stellar career that I think that deserves to be recognized, especially him being from right here in Akron, Ohio. And with that, I know Mr. Hardy has something he wants to say as well.
Mr. Hardy?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, we and we'll be presenting tonight, but we're thrilled to, as Councilwoman Samples said, correct a glaring hole in the tapestry of Akron's music history, which is Mr. James Ingram. So my first experience with James Ingram was Feifel was American Tail. I don't know if anybody knows that duet that he sang with Linda Ronstadt, but as I got older, I discovered all kinds of other wonderful music that James put out. I mean, anybody whom Quincy Jones calls my little brother has done an incredible amount of influence and work in the music industry. So I know the mayor is excited for the presentation tonight, but forever and all time, we will make sure that the city of Akron honors one of its own, James Ingram, with this resolution and with the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Are there any other members of the committee that would like to comment on the resolution? Any members of council that would like to make a comment? Hearing and seeing none, what is your pleasure? Okay. Is there I will take that as a motion. Okay, so we have...
So moved.
Okay, so we have a motion
Second.
for suspension of the rules, and we have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Okay, seeing none, this will be placed as suspension of the rules. If there's nothing else to come before us,
Yes. I am prepared to sing a solo tonight if you want me to.
and which one will that be?
We'll just choose.
I like the 501 personally.
Thank you.
Okay, in a few minutes, we'll move right into public utilities.
Public Utilities will start in 2 minutes. Probably. I go right to the clearance aisle. I absolutely do. Unless somebody else buying it for me. Oh my goodness, they play throughout the entire house. They have their playgrounds. All the wineries close at 11. We went to the arcade in the valley. I'm gonna try to open one in my ward. Huh?
Marilyn, you might be doing a budget. Just so you know.
Don't do that. He'll be very upset that I even told him. Okay, so all members of Public Utilities are present except for Mr. Kilby, who did call me. So can I get a motion for our previous meeting minutes from our last meeting?
Motion for approval.
All in favor? All right, so our first piece is ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service through the Office of the Purchasing Agent to enter into a contract without formality of publicly advertising for bids with Rexel for the annual preventative maintenance of 2 surface pump variable frequency drives at the Akron Water Plant and declaring an emergency.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, we have 2 variable frequency drives up at the water plant. They run 6 pumps. There's 2 25 horsepower pumps and 1 15 horsepower pump run by one of the VFDs, and then the same thing with the second VFD. This would allow us to enter into a contract for the maintenance of these drives for 5 years at a total cost of $150,000.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? Any questions from council members?
This is the company that actually built the frequency drives, and they've been servicing them since they were installed, is the reason we're not bidding this project.
Okay. What's your pleasure?
Consent agenda would be fine.
Okay. Can I get a motion for consent?
Motion for consent.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Next piece, ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent after publicly advertising for bids for miscellaneous concrete work, storm sewer improvements, and asphalt work, all to be completed at the Akron Water Plant and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, we did some renovations to the filter building up at the water plant, and we replaced some chemical lines, and we also had a backwash project for our filter system. All 3 of these projects have been completed, and we did not restore each project when it was completed because we were saving them up to get one contract to do the whole thing. We felt like that would save us some money, and it appears that it's going to save us money because they'll come in and restore the whole area rather than 3 different contractors.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? Council? What's your pleasure?
Consent would be fine.
Can I have a motion for consent?
Motion for consent.
All in favor? If we have nothing else coming before us, we are adjourned.
Thank you.